Some rejections don't just break your heart, they shatter your entire existence in front of 500 witnesses. Ivy stood in the center of the winter solstice mating ball, trembling, as her childhood sweetheart Kyle announced to the entire Moonstone pack that she was broken, wolfless, defective, unworthy. Then he did something worse. He proposed to her stepsister, right there, while Ivy's partial bond with him tore through her chest like claws ripping flesh. The pack laughed. Her father looked away, and Ivy realized with brutal clarity that she'd never mattered to any of them. But here's where everything changes. The iron doors slammed open. The temperature dropped 20 degrees, and the most dangerous alpha in existence, the scarred king who hadn't been seen in 5 years, the god of war himself, walked straight toward her like she was the only person breathing. He didn't ask permission. He ripped off her servant's apron, pulled her against his chest, and sank his fangs into her marking spot right in front of Kyle. Then he whispered 6 words that made the entire kingdom freeze. Let him watch what he lost. What Ivy didn't know? The Alpha King needed her because she was broken. What Kyle didn't know? His rejection just triggered a prophecy that would crown the worthless servant girl as the most powerful creature in the kingdom. And what none of them knew? This was never about love. It was about survival, power, and a bond that would either save them all or destroy everything. Hello, my friends. Before we dive into Ivy's journey from broken servant to legendary queen, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, because trust me, this story has twists you will not see coming. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been publicly humiliated by someone you loved? Let's build a community of survivors who rose from the ashes. Now, let's witness the moment Roman Blackwood walks into that ballroom and changes Ivy's life forever. The winter solstice mating ball was supposed to be magical. Ivy had imagined this night 1,000 times. The crystal chandeliers casting golden light across the marble floors, the orchestra playing ancient mating songs, the moment when Kyle would finally claim her in front of the entire Moonstone pack. She'd worn her mother's silver necklace, the only thing left from the woman who died bringing her into this world. She'd braided wildflowers into her dark hair because Kyle once said they made her eyes look like summer storms. But right now, standing in the center of the grand hall, with 500 pairs of eyes burning into her skin, Ivy wasn't thinking about magic. She was thinking about how badly she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. I, Kyle Ashford, Beta of the Moonstone Pack, formally reject you, Ivy Thorne, as my mate and companion. The words sliced through the music like a blade through silk. The orchestra died mid-note. Conversations evaporated. Even the candles seemed to flicker in shock. Ivy's breath caught in her throat. What? Kyle stood 3 feet away, his jaw set, his green eyes, the ones that used to look at her like she hung the moon, now cold as river stones. He was dressed in his formal Beta regalia, the silver cords on his shoulders catching the light. He looked every inch the warrior he'd trained to be since childhood, and he was looking at her like she was nothing. You heard me. His voice carried across the silent hall, amplified by the acoustics designed to carry the Alpha's commands. I reject the bond. Ivy's hand moved instinctively to her chest, where a phantom pain was beginning to bloom. The mating bond they'd been nurturing since they were 15, feeding it with stolen kisses and whispered promises, was being severed. She could feel it tearing, like roots being ripped from soil. Kyle, please. Her voice cracked. What are you talking about? We were supposed to. Supposed to what? He cut her off, and there was something cruel in his smile now, something she'd never seen before. Supposed to complete the bond? Ivy, you're 20 years old and you still haven't shifted. Do you know what that makes you? The crowd began to whisper. Ivy heard the words clearly. Defective, broken, wolfless. The elders examined you last week, Kyle continued, his voice taking on a formal, rehearsed quality, like he'd practiced this speech. Dr. Hayes confirmed it. You have no wolf. You'll never have a wolf. You're an Omega without the one thing that makes an Omega useful to a pack. Tears burned in Ivy's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. You said you didn't care about that. You said you loved me for me. I lied. The words were so simple, so brutal, that for a moment Ivy couldn't process them. The hall spun. She grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. Kyle took a step closer, and his voice dropped just low enough that only she could hear. Did you really think a Beta of my standing would tie himself to a servant girl with no wolf? I needed you to behave during the transition period. You were convenient, but now? He stepped back, raising his voice again. Now I'm choosing a mate worthy of my rank. He turned to his left, extending his hand. From the crowd emerged Lana Thorne, Ivy's stepsister. Lana was everything Ivy wasn't. Tall, blonde, curves in all the places that mattered, and most importantly, a fully shifted wolf with a glossy golden coat. She was also the cruelest person Ivy had ever known. Lana glided across the floor in a dress that probably cost more than Ivy earned in a year of working in the pack house kitchens. She took Kyle's hand with a smile that was all teeth and triumph. Kyle has asked for my hand, Lana announced, her voice sugar-sweet and poisonous. And I've accepted. The crowd erupted in applause. Just like that, as if Ivy's heart wasn't actively being shredded in the center of the room. Ivy looked around desperately, searching for a friendly face. But the pack members who'd known her since childhood, who'd watched her grow up, who'd accepted her meals and her kindness, they were all looking away. Or worse, they were smiling. Lady Margaret, the Alpha's wife, actually laughed behind her fan. Poor thing. She really thought a beta would want her. She should have stuck to scrubbing floors. Someone else muttered. Ivy's father stood near the back of the hall, his face carefully blank. He'd remarried Lana's mother 3 years ago, and since then, Ivy had gone from daughter to servant in her own home. He wouldn't help her. He never did. Kyle pulled Lana close and kissed her. Right there, in front of everyone. In front of Ivy. The phantom pain in Ivy's chest exploded into something real and agonizing. She gasped, doubling over. The partial bond they'd formed, fed by years of promises and almost matings, was fighting the rejection. Her body didn't want to let go even though her mind knew it had to. Pathetic, Lana whispered as she passed Ivy, her perfume cloying and too sweet. You actually believed him. That's the saddest part. Ivy wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to get out of this hall and away from these people. But her legs wouldn't work. The pain was too much. She sank to her knees on the marble floor, her mother's necklace cold against her skin. The laughter grew louder. Someone get her out of here, Alpha Thompson called from his throne. She's making a scene. 2 guards moved forward, but before they could reach her, the massive iron doors at the entrance slammed open with a sound like thunder. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Every wolf in the hall tensed, their instincts screaming danger, apex predator, submit. The guards froze mid-step. Alpha Thompson stood up from his throne, his face going pale. Even Kyle stopped kissing Lana, his head snapping toward the entrance. Ivy looked up through her tears, and her breath caught for an entirely different reason. A man stood in the doorway, backlit by moonlight. He was massive. At least 6.5 feet of solid muscle wrapped in a black coat that looked like it cost more than the entire ball. His hair was dark as midnight, falling past his collar, but it was his face that made Ivy's heart stutter. Scars. 3 deep claw marks ran from his left temple down to his jaw, the tissue raised and pale against his tan skin. His eyes were the color of liquid silver, and they weren't looking at the Alpha. They weren't looking at the nobles or the guards or any of the important people in the room. They were looking directly at Ivy. The man walked forward, and the crowd parted like he was Moses, and they were the Red Sea. Every person in that hall dropped their gaze in submission. Even Alpha Thompson bowed his head, because this wasn't just any Alpha. This was Roman Blackwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the god of war. The king who'd single-handedly ended the border wars 5 years ago by slaughtering an entire army of rogues in one night. The king who hadn't been seen in public since because rumor said he'd gone mad with bloodlust. And he was walking straight toward Ivy, like she was the only person in the world. Ivy tried to stand, but her legs still wouldn't cooperate. The bond rejection pain was making her dizzy. She watched, frozen, as Roman closed the distance between them in long, purposeful strides. He stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was even more terrifying. The scars were deeper than they'd looked from across the room. His hands were scarred too, marked with the evidence of countless battles. He smelled like winter and smoke and something wild that made her wolf, the wolf she supposedly didn't have, stir somewhere deep in her chest. Please, she whispered, not even sure what she was asking for. Mercy? Help? An explanation? Roman didn't speak. He reached down, grabbed the white servant's apron that marked her as pack house staff, and ripped it off her body in one smooth motion. The ties snapped. Ivy gasped. Then he pulled her to her feet and against his chest, one hand fisting in her hair, tilting her head to expose her throat. No, the protest died in her throat, as she felt his breath on her skin, hot and ragged. "Don't move," he growled, his voice like gravel and silk. "This is going to hurt." Before Ivy could process what was happening, his fangs sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, the marking spot, the place reserved for true mates. The pain was white-hot and immediate, but it was nothing compared to what followed. Power, raw, ancient, overwhelming, flooded into her veins like molten gold. She screamed, her hands clutching at Roman's coat, her body rigid against his. The bond with Kyle, already torn and bleeding, disintegrated completely. But in its place, something infinitely stronger snapped into existence. A golden thread that tied her soul to the man currently marking her in front of 500 witnesses. The entire hall erupted in chaos. "He's claiming her. The king is marking a wolfless Omega. Is he insane?" Roman lifted his head, and Ivy saw her blood on his lips. His silver eyes were glowing, literally glowing, with an otherworldly light. He pressed her back against the nearest banquet table, his body caging hers, protecting her from the staring crowd. But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Kyle. Kyle stood frozen, Lana still clutched in his arms, his face a mask of shock and dawning horror. Roman smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Ivy had ever seen. "Let him watch what he lost," Roman said, his voice carrying across the silent hall with alpha command woven through every word. His hand cupped Ivy's face, forcing her to look at him even as he spoke to Kyle. "Don't close your eyes. Beta, witness a king claim what you were too stupid to keep." Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was possession and fury and a claiming so absolute that Ivy felt it in her bones. His tongue swept into her mouth, demanding submission, and her body, traitorous, confused, overwhelmed, gave it to him. She whimpered against his lips, her hands no longer pushing him away but gripping his coat to keep from collapsing. When he finally pulled back, the entire room was dead silent. Roman kept his eyes on Kyle as he spoke, his hand still cupped around Ivy's jaw. "She's mine now. Anyone who touches her, speaks to her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me. And trust me, Beta Ashford." His smile widened, showing teeth. "You don't want to find out what happens when someone damages my property." Then he swept Ivy into his arms like she weighed nothing, turned on his heel, and carried her out of the ball. The last thing Ivy saw before the doors closed was Kyle's face, pale, shocked, and filled with an emotion she'd never seen there before. Rage. The limousine smelled like leather and danger. Ivy sat pressed against the far door, her hand covering the fresh mark on her neck that still burned like a brand. Roman sat across from her, silent, his silver eyes tracking her every movement like a predator studying prey. They'd been driving for 10 minutes. He hadn't said a single word since carrying her out of the ball. "Why?" Ivy finally whispered, breaking the suffocating silence. "Why did you claim me?" Roman's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the moonlight streaming through the window illuminated the scars on his face. "Because you're broken," he said flatly. The words hit like a slap. Ivy flinched. I know that. Everyone knows that. But why would a king want—" "You misunderstand." Roman's voice was cold, clinical. "I don't want you despite being broken. I want you because you're broken." He tilted his head, studying her like she was a specimen under glass. "You're wolfless. No animal to protect you, no instincts to save you from what I am. That makes you perfect." "Perfect for what?" "To keep me alive." Ivy's breath caught. Roman reached up and unbuttoned the top of his shirt, revealing the skin beneath. Even in the dim light, she could see it, black veins spreading from his heart like cracks in glass, pulsing with an unnatural dark energy. "Alpha madness," he said simply. "My power is too strong. It's been eating me alive for 5 years. Every alpha who's tried to help me has died. My energy burns through them in hours. Normal she-wolves would be ash in my arms." His silver eyes locked onto hers. "But you? You have no wolf to destroy. You're empty. A perfect vessel to absorb the excess." The limousine hit a bump, and Ivy's head spun. "You're saying I'm— what? A medical device?" "Essentially. And if I refuse?" Roman's smile was sharp and humorless. "The mark is already set. The bond is formed. Your body will crave mine now, need it like oxygen. Rejection would kill you slower than it would kill me, but you'd still die." He leaned back, utterly calm. "So no, Ivy Thorne, you don't get to refuse. You're mine until one of us stops breathing. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not again. Not tonight. You're a monster. Yes, Roman agreed without hesitation. But I'm a monster who just saved you from a lifetime of being Kyle Ashford's dirty little secret. I saw the way he looked at you. He was never going to claim you publicly. You would have been his mistress at best, his shame at worst. He tilted his head. At least with me, you're a queen, caged, but crowned. The limousine pulled through massive iron gates, and Ivy caught her first glimpse of the royal palace. It was a fortress carved from black stone, surrounded by walls that could repel an army. Windows glowed like predatory eyes in the darkness. Welcome home, Roman said, but there was no warmth in it. The next 3 days were a nightmare, painted in gold leaf and marble. Ivy was given the queen's chambers, a suite larger than her entire childhood home. Servants dressed her in silks she was afraid to touch. They brought her food she couldn't taste because her stomach was in knots. And every night, Roman came to her room. Not for romance. Not even for conversation. He would sit in the chair by her bed, close enough that she could feel the power radiating off him in waves, and he would drain her. That's what it felt like. Like he was pulling something essential from her core, using her presence to calm the darkness spreading through his veins. The first night, Ivy had passed out after 20 minutes. The second night, she'd lasted an hour before collapsing. By the third night, she could barely stand. "This is killing me," she whispered as Roman sat down in his usual chair. The black veins on his chest had receded slightly, proof that using her was working. But Ivy could see her own reflection in the mirror across the room. Her skin was pale, her eyes hollow. She looked like a ghost. Roman's expression didn't change. "You're stronger than you think. I'm dying. You're adjusting." He leaned forward, and for the first time, something almost like concern flickered across his face. "The bond needs time to stabilize. Your body is learning to channel energy it was never designed to hold. Give it a week." "And if I don't survive the week?" Roman was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and moved to the window, his back to her. "Then I'll find another way to die." The admission shocked her. Ivy struggled to sit up. "You'd rather die than force another woman into this?" "I've done enough evil in my life, Ivy. I won't add trafficking women to the list." His voice was rough, tired. "You were already drowning when I found you. I threw you a rope, even if that rope is barbed wire. At least you're still breathing." Before Ivy could respond, someone pounded on the door. Roman's entire body went rigid. "Enter." A guard burst in, his face pale. "Your Majesty, there's been a challenge. Beta Kyle Ashford has invoked the duel of ownership. He claims you stole his mate through coercion and demands the right to fight for her return." Ivy's blood ran cold. Roman's hands clenched into fists. "When?" he growled. 3 days from now. Full moon. The council has approved it," he used the ancient laws. "You can't refuse without appearing weak." The guard hesitated. "Sire, if you show weakness now, the other territories will move against you. They'll see the madness. They'll strike." Roman turned to look at Ivy, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something human in those silver eyes. Fear, not for himself, for her. "Fine," he said coldly. "Tell the Beta I accept, and tell him to make peace with his gods, because I'm going to rip him apart in front of the entire kingdom." The training grounds behind the palace were built for war. Stone pillars marked the perimeter of the dueling circle, each one carved with the names of warriors who died in combat. Ivy stood on the balcony above, watching Roman prepare for a fight that could destroy everything. He moved like violence given form, shirtless, the black veins across his chest visible even from this distance. Every muscle coiled with lethal precision as he practiced strikes against a wooden dummy that splintered under his fists. He's going to lose. Ivy spun around. A woman stood in the doorway, elegant and cold, with hair like spun silver and eyes that matched Roman's. She wore the formal robes of the royal council. "Who are you?" Ivy demanded. "Elara Blackwood, Roman's aunt, and the head of council." She glided forward, her gaze assessing. "And you're the little broken thing he's using as a shield against death. How romantic. If you're here to insult me, I'm here to tell you the truth before it's too late." Elara moved to the balcony railing, watching Roman below. "My nephew is dying. The alpha madness has progressed too far. In 3 days, when he faces Kyle in combat, the exertion will trigger a full episode. He'll lose control." Her voice dropped. "And when an alpha king loses control in front of the council, they invoke the mercy kill protocol. He'll be executed before sunset." Ivy's heart hammered. Then stop the duel. You're on the council. I voted to approve it. Alara's smile was razor sharp. Roman has no heir. When he dies, the crown passes to the council's chosen successor. We've been waiting 5 years for him to either cure himself or succumb. Kyle's challenge simply accelerated the timeline. You want him dead, your own nephew. I want stability. Roman is chaos. Alara turned to face Ivy fully. But here's your opportunity, little Omega. If you truly want to save him, there's one option. Run. Tonight. Disappear before the duel. Without you to stabilize him, Roman will have to forfeit. He'll be too weak to fight. Forfeiting means exile, not death. He lives, just not as king. Ivy's mind raced. And Kyle gets exactly what he wants. Alara's eyes gleamed. Which brings me to the interesting part. Do you know why Kyle suddenly wants you back so desperately? Because Roman claimed me. Male ego. Because Kyle is Roman's half-brother. The world tilted. Ivy grabbed the railing. What? The former king had an affair with a beta female. Kyle Ashford is the bastard result. Roman doesn't know. The secret was buried. Alara leaned in conspiratorially. But Kyle knows. And he's been planning this for years. The rejection, the public humiliation, the challenge. It's all part of a long game to break you. Then save you. Then use you. Use me for what? There's a prophecy. An ancient text that speaks of a white direwolf. A creature of immense power that appears wolfless until awakened by an alpha king's energy. Kyle believes you're that wolf. He rejected you to shatter your confidence, planning to swoop in later as your savior, manipulate you into killing Roman, and claim both you and the throne. Alara's smile was vicious. Roman claiming you publicly ruined everything. Now Kyle has to take you by force. Ivy's legs nearly gave out. That's insane. I don't have a wolf. I've been tested. Tests can be wrong. Prophecies rarely are. Alara straightened her robes. So here's your choice, girl. Run and save Roman's life, but lose your chance at the truth. Or stay, watch him die in the arena, and spend the rest of your life as Kyle's weapon. Before Ivy could respond, a commotion erupted from the courtyard below. Kyle had arrived. He stood at the entrance to the training grounds, flanked by 20 warriors bearing the Moonstone Pack insignia. But it was the woman beside him that made Ivy's blood run cold. Lana. Her stepsister held Kyle's arm possessively, but her eyes were locked on the balcony, on Ivy, with pure hatred. Roman Blackwood, Kyle's voice rang out with alpha command. I've come to inspect my opponent before our duel. Surely you're not afraid to face me. Roman stopped mid-strike. He turned slowly, and even from the balcony, Ivy could see the black veins pulsing faster. The madness was already rising. You have some nerve, Roman growled, coming to my home with an army at your back. Not an army. Witnesses. Kyle smiled. I want everyone to see the truth about you. Brother. The word hung in the air like a blade. Roman went utterly still. What did you just say? Oh, you didn't know? Kyle's grin widened. Our father was quite prolific. Pity he loved your mother more than mine. But blood doesn't lie. We're family, Roman, which makes this duel so much more biblical. Cain and Abel. Romulus and Remus. He looked up at the balcony, directly at Ivy. And the woman caught between us? She's the real prize. Not for her heart, for what she'll become. Roman's power exploded outward. The ground cracked beneath his feet. Several of Kyle's warriors stumbled back, whimpering in submission. You want to fight? Roman's voice was barely human now. You'll get one. And when I'm done, there won't be enough left of you to bury. Kyle just laughed. We'll see. 3 days, brother. Don't die before then. I want Ivy to watch you fall. He turned and left, Lana casting one final triumphant look at Ivy before disappearing. Ivy's hands shook. Alara was already gone, vanished like smoke. Below, Roman collapsed to his knees, black veins spreading up his neck toward his face. Guards rushed forward, and Ivy realized with crystal clarity, the duel wasn't about winning. It was a trap. Kyle wanted Roman to lose control, to prove he was mad, to justify killing him, and she was the bait that made it all possible. Roman didn't come to her room that night, or the next. By the second evening, Ivy could feel the bond screaming in her chest, a physical ache that demanded his presence. She found him in the palace armory at midnight, surrounded by weapons he couldn't use without triggering the madness. You're avoiding me, she said from the doorway. Smart girl. He didn't look up from the sword he was sharpening. The black veins had spread to his jawline now. The closer we get to the duel, the more unstable I become. Being near you helps, but it also makes me possessive, dangerous. More dangerous than letting yourself deteriorate? You don't understand what I'm capable of when I lose control. His hand tightened on the blade until blood dripped from his palm. He didn't even flinch. I could kill you, Ivy, and I'd hate myself, but you'd still be dead. She stepped into the room. Then teach me to fight. If Kyle wins, I need to defend myself. Roman's laugh was bitter. Kyle won't kill you. He needs you alive for whatever prophecy nonsense he believes in. Finally, he looked at her, and his silver eyes were molten. But fine. If you want to learn, we start now. Don't expect mercy. The training was brutal. Roman didn't hold back. Every strike was real. Every lesson taught through pain. By the third session, Ivy's body was covered in bruises. But something inside her was waking up. Something that growled when Roman pinned her to the mat, his body heavy against hers. You're too slow, he murmured against her ear, his breath hot. Kyle will exploit every weakness. Then stop going easy on me. Ivy shot back and twisted beneath him, a move he'd taught her yesterday. For half a second, she had leverage. Roman's eyes flashed. In one fluid motion, he reversed their positions, slamming her back down with his hand around her throat. Not choking, just holding. His face was inches from hers, and the air between them crackled. You want me to stop going easy? His voice dropped to a dangerous purr. Careful what you wish for, little Omega. Ivy's heart hammered, but not from fear. From something else entirely. Why do you care if I survive? You said I'm just a tool. Roman's grip loosened slightly. His thumb traced her pulse point. Tools can still be valuable. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. But when he pulled away, Ivy saw it. The crack in his armor. The way his hand lingered a moment too long. The way his breathing was uneven. He felt it too. The bond wasn't just practical anymore. Kyle sent gifts. Roses that Ivy burned. Letters that she threw away unread. But the fourth one came with a photograph that made her blood run cold. It was her father, tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Beaten. Terrified. Come to the moonstone border at dawn. Alone. Or he dies. You know I'm serious. You have 2 hours to decide if you still love your family. Kay. Ivy's hands shook. Her father had abandoned her, yes. But he was still her father. The man who'd taught her to read, who'd carried her on his shoulders before her mother died. She looked at the clock. 4 a.m. The duel was in 6 hours. Roman would never let her go. He'd say it was a trap, which it obviously was. But if she did nothing, her father would die because of her. She grabbed a cloak and slipped out of the palace. The moonstone border was shrouded in fog. Ivy found her father exactly where Kyle said he'd be, chained in an abandoned mill. But the moment she ran to him, she realized her mistake. Her father wasn't beaten. The bruises were makeup, and he wasn't afraid. He was smiling. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he said as figures emerged from the shadows. Kyle stepped forward, Lana at his side. But a man has to look out for his future. Kyle promised me a fortune if I help lure you out. And honestly, after you humiliated this family by spreading your legs for a mad king, you deserve this. Ivy stumbled back. You betrayed me. Again. I taught you a valuable lesson. Her father's smile was cold. Never trust anyone, not even blood. Kyle moved forward, but he didn't attack. He pulled out a syringe filled with glowing silver liquid. This is wolfsbane extract, enough to knock you out for hours. When you wake up, Roman will be dead, and you'll be mine. We'll awaken your wolf together, and you'll help me take the throne, willingly or not. Roman will come for me. Roman doesn't know you're gone, and by the time he figures it out, he'll be too busy bleeding out in the arena. Kyle grabbed her arm. You were always meant to be mine, Ivy. I just had to break you first. Make you desperate enough to believe a monster loved you. But he doesn't. He can't. Men like Roman don't love. They conquer. Ivy tried to fight, but Lana grabbed her from behind. The needle pierced her skin. As the world went fuzzy, Ivy heard Kyle whisper, when you wake up, everything changes. The real game begins. Her last thought before darkness claimed her was of Roman, and the look on his face when he realized she was gone. If you're listening without subscribing, you're literally breaking my heart. This story took hours to craft for you, and all I ask is one click on that subscribe button. That's it. One click to support free content that's giving you all the drama, romance, and plot twists. And comment below. Do you think Ivy's father deserves a redemption, or should he rot for what he did? Your comments fuel these stories. And honestly, seeing 0 comments after pouring my soul into this hurts. Be part of this community. Subscribe, comment, let me know you're here. Now back to Roman kicking down doors to save his mate. Ivy woke to chains, silver chains that burned her wrists, bolted to a stone wall in what looked like an old dungeon. Her head throbbed from the wolfsbane, and her throat was dry as sandpaper. Awake already? Kyle sat across from her on a wooden chair, completely relaxed. The dosage should have kept you under for hours. Interesting. Your body metabolized it faster than a normal human should. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Tell me, Ivy, have you felt anything strange lately? Surges of energy? Dreams of running through forests on 4 legs? Go to hell. Already there, sweetheart. Might as well have company. He stood and circled her like a shark. Let me tell you a story. 20 years ago, a white direwolf was prophesied to be born during a lunar eclipse. A creature so powerful it could tear apart alpha kings with its bare teeth. The prophecy said this wolf would appear broken, wolfless, until awakened by an alpha's energy. Ivy's heart pounded. I'm not. Your mother died giving birth to you during a lunar eclipse. You survived even though you should have died. The doctor said you had no heartbeat for 3 minutes. And despite every test saying you're wolfless, you're still alive after bonding with a king whose power should have incinerated you. Kyle crouched in front of her. You're not broken, Ivy. You're dormant, and I'm going to wake you up. Before she could respond, the dungeon door exploded inward. Roman stood in the wreckage, and he was terrifying. The black veins covered half his face now, pulsing with dark energy. His eyes glowed pure silver. Blood dripped from his hands. He'd torn through Kyle's guards with his bare fists. Get away from her. Each word was a death sentence. Kyle smiled and pulled Ivy to her feet, a knife appearing at her throat. One step closer, and I open her jugular. Even your bond can't save her from bleeding out. Roman froze, every muscle screaming violence. I'll kill you slowly for this. Maybe. But first let's talk about family. Kyle's grin widened. Did you ever wonder why Father visited the Moonstone Pack so often? Why he favored their territory? He pressed the knife harder, and Ivy whimpered. He was visiting my mother, his mistress, his true love, actually. You were the obligation. I was the choice. Lies. DNA doesn't lie, brother. I had the tests done years ago. Kyle's expression twisted into something ugly. He loved her more than your perfect, politically advantageous mother, but he couldn't marry her because she was beta. So he gave her money and promises and me, a bastard son who'd never inherit. His voice rose. While you got everything, the crown, the power, the respect. So yes, Roman, I'm going to take it all back, starting with your mate. Roman's control shattered. He lunged forward, and Kyle shoved Ivy aside, meeting him head-on. The 2 alphas collided with a force that cracked the stone floor. Ivy crashed against the wall, her vision swimming. Through the haze, she watched them fight. Roman was stronger, but the madness was consuming him. His strikes were wild, uncontrolled. Kyle was calculated, patient, waiting for the moment Roman would collapse. Come on, brother, Kyle taunted, dodging a blow that would have decapitated him. Show everyone what you really are, a rabid dog that needs to be put down. Roman roared, and the sound was barely human. The black veins spread across his entire torso, crawling up his neck. He was losing himself. Roman, stop! Ivy screamed. You're playing into his trap. But Roman couldn't hear her anymore. The madness had taken over completely. He grabbed Kyle by the throat and lifted him off the ground, his hand tightening with killing force. Kyle's face turned purple, but he smiled through the pain. Do it, he choked out. Kill me in front of witnesses. Prove you're the monster they fear. The council is watching through the cameras. End me, and they'll execute you before sunset. Ivy saw them then. Red lights blinking in the corners. Security cameras. This entire thing was being broadcast. Roman's hand tightened. Kyle's eyes rolled back. Roman. No. Ivy didn't know where the strength came from. One moment she was chained and helpless. The next, the silver restraints shattered like glass. Power exploded through her veins, white-hot and ancient and furious. She didn't shift. Not completely, but her eyes blazed white, and when she screamed, the sound made both alphas freeze. Enough. The word carried alpha command, impossible for an omega, impossible for someone wolfless, but the power was undeniable. Roman dropped Kyle, stumbling backward, his eyes cleared slightly, recognition flickering through the madness. Ivy? His voice was raw. What? She's awakening. Kyle gasped from the floor, blood dripping from his mouth. But he was laughing. I knew it. The prophecy is real. You felt it too, didn't you, Roman? That power? He looked at the cameras. The entire kingdom just witnessed a wolfless Omega use Alpha command. Explain that to the council. Roman's face went pale. Not from the madness, from understanding. The duel, he whispered. It was never about winning Ivy back. It was about exposing her, forcing her to reveal what she is. In 2 hours, you fight me in that arena, Kyle said, still grinning despite his injuries. And when you lose control, which you will, Ivy's instincts will force her to defend you. She'll shift in front of the entire kingdom, and when they see what she really is, his eyes gleamed with triumph. They'll fear her more than they fear you. And fear makes people do stupid things, like demand she be executed. Ivy's legs gave out. Roman caught her, but she could feel him trembling. Unless, Kyle continued, you forfeit, abdicate, give me the crown, and I'll protect her. I'll claim her as my own and keep her safe from the council's fear. Roman's arms tightened around Ivy. Never. Then we'll see you in the arena. May the best brother win. The arena was packed. Thousands of wolves from every territory filled the stone seats, their eyes hungry for blood. Ivy sat in the royal box, flanked by guards who were there to protect her or prevent her escape. Below, the dueling circle waited, stained with centuries of warrior blood. Roman stood on one side, shirtless, the black veins now covering most of his torso. He looked like death walking. Across from him, Kyle stretched casually, confident and whole. This is madness, Elara hissed beside Ivy. Roman can barely stand. The madness will consume him the moment the fight begins. Then stop this. Ivy grabbed the older woman's arm. You're on the council. The council wants this. Half hope Kyle wins and brings stability. The other half hope Roman kills Kyle and proves he's too dangerous to rule. Elara's expression was ice. Either way, you lose. If Roman wins but loses control, they'll execute him. If Kyle wins, he owns you. There's no outcome where you both survive. Below, the royal herald raised his hand. The duel of ownership begins now. The victor claims the disputed mate and the right to challenge for the throne. Fight until submission or death. The arena erupted in cheers. Kyle smiled at Roman. Last chance, brother. Forfeit. Walk away. Live as an exile with your dignity. I'd rather die than let you touch her. Roman's voice was barely controlled. The madness was already rising. Ivy could see it in the way his hands trembled, the way his eyes flickered between silver and black. So be it. Kyle struck first, fast and brutal. Roman blocked, but his movements were sluggish. The madness was eating his coordination. Kyle's next blow caught him in the ribs, and Ivy heard bones crack from 50 feet away. Roman staggered but didn't fall. He swung back, and the power behind his fist was devastating. It would have killed Kyle instantly if it connected. But Kyle ducked, letting Roman's momentum carry him forward, off balance. You're already gone, Kyle taunted, dancing out of range. I don't even have to fight you. Just wait until you collapse. Roman roared and charged. For a moment, he was magnificent, the god of war that legends spoke of. But then the black veins pulsed, and he stumbled. Kyle's kick caught him in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped. Get up, Ivy whispered, her hands gripping the railing. Please, get up. Roman tried. He made it to his knees before his body betrayed him. Blood dripped from his mouth. The madness was consuming him from the inside. Kyle walked over slowly, savoring the moment. You were always the stronger fighter, but strength means nothing when your own body is your enemy. He looked up at Ivy in the royal box. Watch closely, sweetheart. This is what happens to men who think they can keep you. He raised his fist for the killing blow. No! Ivy screamed, and the bond in her chest exploded with agony. She felt Roman's pain, his rage, his desperation, and beneath it all, something else. Love. He loved her. Not as a tool or a cure, but as a person, as his mate, and he was going to die believing he'd failed her. Something inside Ivy shattered. The chains she didn't know she was wearing, chains wrapped around her soul since birth, disintegrated. Power flooded her veins, white and pure and absolutely terrifying. Stop, she whispered. But the word carried alpha command, multiplied by 1,000. Everyone in the arena froze. Kyle's fist hung in the air, inches from Roman's face. The guards, the council, even the spectators, all locked in place by the weight of her will. Ivy stood, and her eyes blazed pure white. I said stop. She vaulted over the railing, a 20-foot drop that should have broken her legs. Instead, she landed in a crouch, her body moving with predatory grace she'd never possessed before. Kyle broke through the command first, spinning to face her. Finally. Show them what you are, Ivy. Let them see. The shift hit her like lightning. Pain exploded through every nerve as her body restructured itself. Bones cracked and reformed. Her skin burned as white fur erupted across her body. She fell to all fours, screaming. But the scream became a howl that shook the arena foundations. When the transformation completed, silence fell like a guillotine. Ivy stood in the center of the arena, but she wasn't Ivy anymore. She was a white direwolf, twice the size of a normal wolf, with fur that glowed like moonlight and eyes that burned with ancient power. The prophecy made flesh. The crowd erupted in chaos. Fear, awe, and terror rippled through the stands. The white wolf, someone screamed. The prophecy is real. She'll destroy us all. Kill it before it's too late. Kyle laughed, triumphant. You see? They fear you already. In minutes, the council will vote to execute you as a threat to the kingdom. He looked at Roman, still collapsed on the ground. Unless you submit to me, be my mate, help me take the throne, and I'll protect you from their fear. Choose, Ivy. Me or death. Ivy's wolf snarled, but Kyle was right. She could hear the council members shouting for her execution. Guards were already moving into position with silver nets and wolfsbane arrows. Roman struggled to his feet, blood streaming down his face. Ivy, he rasped. Run. Leave me. Save yourself. How touching, Kyle sneered. The monster finally finds his heart just in time to watch her die. Ivy looked between them, Kyle offering protection through submission, Roman offering freedom through sacrifice, the crowd screaming for her death, the guards closing in. There was no way out. She'd awakened her power, but it had only sealed her fate. The silver nets flew through the air. Ivy's wolf instincts screamed to run, but she couldn't leave Roman bleeding in the dirt. She positioned herself over him, snarling at the approaching guards. Stand down, Kyle commanded. The wolf is mine to control. But Ivy's wolf didn't obey. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The white glow intensified, and Roman gasped beneath her. The black veins on his chest began to recede, pulled toward Ivy like iron to a magnet. She was absorbing the madness, but not like before. Now she was strong enough to contain it, to transmute it. Roman's eyes cleared. For the first time in 5 years, they were pure silver. No darkness, no insanity, just clarity. Ivy, he breathed, understanding flooding his face. You're not draining me. You're healing me. Impossible. Ilara stood from the council box, her composure finally cracking. The bond doesn't work that way. She's an Omega, she can't. She's not an Omega. Roman pushed himself to his feet, strength returning with every second Ivy's power flowed into him. She never was. The direwolf is an apex predator, higher than alpha, higher than king. She wasn't broken. She was dormant, because no normal wolf body could contain that power. He looked at Kyle, and his smile was dangerous. You wanted to use her to kill me, but you miscalculated. She doesn't need a master. She is the master. Kyle's face twisted with rage. No, she's supposed to be controllable. The prophecy said. The prophecy said a white wolf would arise to balance power, not serve it. Roman continued, his voice growing stronger. You read what you wanted to read, brother. Your ambition blinded you. Ivy felt the shift happening inside her, not just physical, but mental. Her wolf wasn't separate from her. It was her, amplified, and with Roman's madness absorbed and neutralized. She understood the bond now. It wasn't one-sided. Roman needed her to survive the madness, but she needed him to anchor her power, to keep it from consuming her completely. They were two halves of a whole, neither master nor servant. Equals. She shifted back to human form, and Roman immediately stripped off his coat to cover her. The crowd gasped. She stood before them unashamed, power radiating from her skin like heat. "The duel is over," Ivy announced, her voice carrying alpha command that made even the council members bow their heads involuntarily. Kyle Ashford used deception, kidnapping, and conspiracy to orchestrate this fight. He is the threat to this kingdom. Not me. Lies. Kyle snarled. "She's dangerous. Look at her. That power could destroy us all. Then let me prove otherwise." Ivy turned to the crowd, to the thousands of terrified faces. "I understand your fear, but I'm not your enemy. I'm Ivy Thorne, daughter of a servant, raised in pack houses and kitchens. I know what it's like to be powerless. I would never use this gift to oppress others." "Pretty words," someone shouted from the stands. "But power corrupts." "Then hold me accountable," Ivy countered. "The same laws that govern alphas should govern me. I submit to the council's authority, to the kingdom's justice. But I will not submit to a man who tried to manipulate me into becoming a weapon." Alara stepped forward, her expression calculating. "A bold offer. But the law is clear." Kyle invoked the duel of ownership. "The fight must conclude with a victor." "Then let it conclude." Roman stepped beside Ivy, fully recovered, his presence commanding. "I'm ready to finish this. No madness, no handicaps, just skill against skill." Kyle's confidence wavered. Without the madness to cripple Roman, he was facing the god of war at full strength. "Unless," Roman continued, his voice dropping to a deadly purr, "you'd like to confess your conspiracy before I break every bone in your body. Tell them how you're my half-brother, how you plan to use Ivy as a weapon, how you kidnapped your own pack member's daughter to lure my mate into a trap." The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Kyle's warriors shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't known about the kidnapping or the conspiracy. "Choose wisely, brother," Roman said. "Honorable defeat and exile, or painful defeat and execution?" Kyle looked around desperately. His support was crumbling. Even Lana had disappeared from the crowd, abandoning him. His father sat in the stands, face carefully blank, refusing to defend the bastard son who'd exposed their family shame. "This isn't over," Kyle hissed. The prophecy is complete," Ivy interrupted. "I've awakened. The balance is restored. You're just too bitter to see it." She took Roman's hand, and their combined power made the air shimmer. "I choose him, not as a master or a cure, but as my equal, my mate, my king." The bond between them blazed golden, visible to everyone in the arena, proof of a true mating, not coercion. Kyle's face contorted with fury. "You'll regret this, both of you." He lunged, not at Roman, but at Ivy, a hidden blade flashing in his hand. He never made contact. Ivy's wolf surged forward in a partial shift, claws extending, eyes blazing white, and she caught his wrist mid-strike. The blade fell harmlessly to the ground. "Exile," she said coldly, her voice layered with her wolf's growl. "Leave this kingdom. If you ever return, I won't be merciful." She released him with a shove that sent him sprawling. Guards surrounded Kyle immediately, dragging him toward the arena exit. He screamed threats and curses, but nobody listened. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Kyle Ashford, the man who'd orchestrated everything, was removed in disgrace. Roman pulled Ivy close. "That was impressive. I learned from the best," she murmured, and kissed him. Not for the crowd, not for politics, but because she wanted to. When they broke apart, the arena erupted in cheers. The victory celebration lasted exactly 20 minutes. Ivy and Roman were being escorted back to the palace when the explosion ripped through the arena's east wall. The blast sent wolves flying, screams piercing the air as stone and fire rained down. "Ivy, get down!" Roman shoved her behind a pillar as another explosion detonated. Through the smoke and chaos, figures emerged. Kyle's remaining loyal warriors, armed with silver weapons and wolfsbane grenades. And leading them was Kyle himself, his face twisted with madness. "If I can't have you, no one can. I'll burn this entire kingdom to ash." "He's lost his mind," Roman growled, already moving to intercept. But Kyle wasn't aiming for Roman. He was aiming for the crowd, innocent civilians still trapped in the arena. "The supports!" Kyle screamed to his warriors. "Bring down the structure. Bury them all." His men rushed toward the arena's main support columns with explosive charges. If those fell, Thousands would die in the collapse. Ivy's mind raced. Roman could fight Kyle, but he couldn't stop the bombs and save the civilians simultaneously. They needed to split up, but that meant facing Kyle's warriors alone. Go, Roman said, reading her thoughts through the bond. Save them. I'll handle Kyle. He'll kill you if you're alone, and thousands will die if we do nothing. Roman cupped her face, fierce and desperate. I trust you. Trust yourself. Ivy nodded and shifted. Her white direwolf burst forward with supernatural speed, heading straight for the support columns. Behind her, she heard Roman and Kyle collide with bone-shattering force. The first warrior she reached barely had time to scream before her jaws clamped around his arm, stopping him from triggering the detonator. She flung him aside and crushed the device under her massive paw. The white wolf, another warrior shouted. Kill it. Silver bullets whizzed past her ears. One grazed her shoulder, and the burn was agonizing, but her direwolf healing was already closing the wound. She was faster than them, stronger, and fueled by desperation. One by one, she took them down, disarming, disabling, but not killing. These wolves were misguided, not evil. They'd followed Kyle's lies. But there were too many. She couldn't reach all the columns in time. Then she felt it, the bond blazing in her chest. Roman was sending her his strength, his power, through their connection. The black veins that once poisoned him now flowed into her like fuel, amplifying her abilities. Ivy's wolf grew larger, faster. She became a white blur, moving impossibly quick. She reached the final support column just as the warrior triggered the detonator. Time slowed. Ivy saw the explosive device counting down. 3 seconds. 2. 1. She didn't think. She grabbed the device in her jaws and leaped, launching herself through the shattered wall and into the open air beyond the arena. The bomb detonated mid-flight, and the explosion consumed her. Ivy! Roman's anguished roar echoed across the arena. Kyle laughed, victorious. It's done. She's dead, and you're... Roman's fist connected with Kyle's jaw, and the crack was audible across the battlefield. Wrong. Through the smoke, a figure emerged. Ivy, back in human form, covered in ash and blood, but very much alive. Her direwolf healing had saved her from the worst of the blast. Impossible, Kyle whispered. You never understood, Ivy said, walking toward them with lethal grace. The prophecy wasn't about destruction, it was about protection. The white direwolf doesn't exist to conquer. It exists to defend. Roman moved to her side, and together they faced Kyle. Their combined power was overwhelming. Alpha King and Direwolf Queen, perfectly balanced. Kyle pulled a final knife, his last desperate weapon. I won't let you. He lunged. Roman stepped right. Ivy stepped left. They moved as one, years of partnership compressed into perfect synchronization through the bond. Roman caught Kyle's wrist. Ivy swept his legs. Kyle crashed to the ground, defeated utterly. It's over, Roman said quietly. Stand down, or die. Your choice. Kyle lay there, broken and defeated, tears of rage streaming down his face. I should have been king. I should have had everything. You had the chance to be better, Ivy said softly. You chose vengeance instead. The royal guard surrounded them, taking Kyle into custody. This time, there would be no escape. No more chances. Alara approached, her expression unreadable. The council has made a decision. She looked at Ivy. Your actions today proved you're not a threat. You saved thousands of lives at risk to your own. The council formally recognizes you as queen consort and Roman's true mate. She paused, then smiled, genuinely, for the first time. Welcome to the family, Your Majesty. The crowd that had survived erupted in cheers. Long live the queen. Long live the king. Roman pulled Ivy close, and she melted into him. We did it, she whispered. No, Roman corrected, kissing her forehead. You did it. You saved us all. We saved each other, Ivy said, and kissed him properly, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they broke apart, the sun was setting, painting the sky in golds and crimsons. The war was over. Kyle was captured. The kingdom was safe. And for the first time in her life, Ivy felt complete. 3 months later, the royal palace looked like something out of a dream. White roses, Ivy's favorite, cascaded down every marble column. Golden banners bearing the new royal crest hung from the vaulted ceilings. A wolf and a crown intertwined, symbolizing the unity between king and queen, Alpha and Direwolf. Today was the official coronation. Ivy stood in the queen's chambers, barely recognizing her reflection. The woman in the mirror wore a gown of silver silk that caught the light like moonbeams. Her dark hair was crowned with a delicate circlet embedded with moonstones. But it was her eyes that had changed the most. They held confidence now, power tempered with compassion. "You look beautiful," Alara said from the doorway. The older woman had become an unexpected ally these past months, helping Ivy navigate the treacherous political waters of court life. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Ivy admitted. 3 months ago, I was scrubbing floors. Now I'm about to become queen, in front of the entire kingdom. 3 months ago, you were already a queen. You just didn't know it yet." Alara adjusted Ivy's circlet with surprising gentleness. "The kingdom loves you, child. You saved thousands of lives. You brought peace to territories that have been feuding for decades. And you healed a king everyone thought was beyond saving." Ivy touched the mark on her neck, Roman's claiming bite, now a silver scar that glowed faintly when they were near each other. The bond between them had evolved into something beautiful. Every morning, she woke, wrapped in his arms. Every night, they fell asleep, sharing whispered dreams and stolen kisses. He'd been right that first night in the limousine. The bond did make her body crave his. But it wasn't the desperate, painful need of a tool for its user. It was the natural desire of a woman for her mate, her equal, her love. "Is it time?" Ivy asked. Alara smiled. "The king is waiting. And between you and me, he's been pacing like a caged wolf for the past hour. Put him out of his misery." The grand hall was packed with nobility from every territory. Ivy walked down the aisle alone, a symbolic gesture showing she came to Roman as an equal, not a possession to be given away. Her heart pounded with each step, but then she saw him. Roman stood at the altar in full royal regalia, and the sight of him stole her breath. The black veins were completely gone, his skin healthy and whole. The scars on his face had faded to thin silver lines that somehow made him more handsome. But it was his eyes that held her, silver and clear and full of so much love it made her chest ache. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're stunning. You're not so bad yourself, Your Majesty," she whispered back, and his smile could have lit the entire kingdom. The ceremony was conducted by the high priestess, an ancient she-wolf who'd served the crown for 60 years. Her voice rang through the hall as she bound their hands with a golden cord. "Roman Blackwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, do you accept Ivy Thorne as your queen, your mate, your equal in all things?" "I do," Roman said, his voice steady and sure. "Not because she heals me, or saves me, or completes me, though she does all those things, but because she challenges me, frustrates me, and loves me even when I'm difficult." His thumb stroked her palm. "I choose her every day, in every way." Tears burned Ivy's eyes. The priestess turned to her. "Ivy Thorne, White Direwolf and Queen Consort, do you accept Roman Blackwood as your king, your mate, your equal in all things?" "I do." Ivy's voice was thick with emotion. "He saw me when I was invisible. He valued me when I thought I was worthless. He gave me the space to become who I was meant to be." She squeezed his hands. "And he kneels before me not in submission but in partnership. I choose him, always." The priestess smiled and raised their joined hands. "Then by the power vested in me by moon and blood, I pronounce you king and queen, mates before the goddess, partners in this life and beyond. You may seal your bond." Roman pulled Ivy close and kissed her, and the entire hall erupted in cheers. But Ivy barely heard them. In that moment, there was only Roman, his lips on hers, his arms around her, his love wrapping her like a blanket. When they broke apart, white light erupted from Ivy's body, and Roman's answering silver aura rose to meet it. The two powers intertwined, creating a spectacular display that left the crowd gasping in awe. "Show-offs," Alara called from the front row, but she was smiling. The celebration feast lasted hours. Ivy sat beside Roman at the high table, their fingers intertwined beneath the tablecloth, watching their kingdom celebrate. Wolves from every territory mingled freely, former enemies sharing drinks and laughter, united under a new era of peace. But there was one conversation Ivy needed to have before the night ended. She found her father in a corner of the hall, nursing a drink alone. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by shame. "Ivy, Your Majesty," he corrected himself quickly, standing and bowing. "I didn't think you'd want to see me." "I didn't," Ivy said honestly. "For a long time, I hated you for what you did. The betrayal at the border, the years of treating me like a servant, choosing Lana and her mother over your own daughter. Her father's face crumpled. I don't expect forgiveness. I was weak and cruel, and I failed you as a father. I'm not finished, Ivy interrupted gently. I hated you, but I've learned something these past months. Holding on to that hate was only hurting me. She took a breath. You're still my father. You still taught me to read, still carried me on your shoulders when I was small. And somewhere in there, before grief and fear twisted you, you loved me. Tears streamed down his face. I did. I do. Your mother would be so ashamed of what I became. Maybe, Ivy acknowledged, but she'd also want me to be better than my pain. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave the Moonstone Pack. Roman has arranged for you to manage a farmstead in the Eastern Territory. Honest work, far from Lana and her mother's influence. You'll earn your keep through labor, not manipulation. I don't deserve your mercy. You don't, Ivy agreed. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I refuse to let bitterness poison the happiness I've found. Work hard, be better, and maybe someday we can have a real conversation without the weight of betrayal between us. She turned to leave, but her father caught her hand. Thank you, he whispered. And Ivy? Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become. I know I am, even though I have no right to be. Ivy nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. She found Roman on the balcony, staring at the moon. He opened his arms, and she stepped into his embrace, fitting perfectly against his chest. How do you feel? He murmured against her hair. Lighter, Ivy admitted. Like I finally put down a weight I've been carrying my entire life. Good, he kissed her temple. You deserve to be free of it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the celebration below. Then Roman pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. I know we're already mated and married, he said, opening it to reveal a ring of white gold with a moonstone center. But I wanted to give you something that was just yours, not because of prophecy or politics or bonds, just because I love you. Ivy's vision blurred. Roman, you asked me once why I cared if you survived, he continued, sliding the ring onto her finger. I told you that you were valuable, but the truth is, somewhere between the ball and the duel, between the training sessions and the late-night conversations, I stopped seeing you as a tool and started seeing you as everything. My mate, my queen, my Ivy. She kissed him then, pouring every ounce of love and gratitude and joy into it. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Take me to bed, husband, Ivy whispered. I believe we have a coronation to celebrate properly. Roman's eyes blazed silver. As my queen commands. He swept her into his arms and carried her through the palace halls, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. Servants smiled as they passed. Guards bowed with genuine respect. This was her life now, not a servant, not broken, not wolfless. A queen. A dire wolf. A woman who'd been shattered and remade herself into something stronger. The next morning, Ivy woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Roman's arms around her waist. She stretched lazily, feeling deliciously sore and deeply content. Good morning, wife, Roman rumbled, his voice still rough with sleep. Good morning, husband, Ivy replied, turning to face him. His hair was adorably mussed, and she couldn't resist running her fingers through it. I have news, Roman said, suddenly serious. The council received word this morning. Kyle escaped during transport to the northern prison. Ivy's blood ran cold. What? He had help. Some of his loyal warriors broke him free. They disappeared into rogue territory. Roman cupped her face. But listen to me. He's no longer a threat we face alone. Every territory has been notified. If he surfaces anywhere, we'll know. And this time, there will be no duels or trials. Just justice. Ivy nodded slowly. Part of her had known Kyle wouldn't accept defeat gracefully. Men like him never did. But she wasn't the same terrified girl he'd rejected 3 months ago. Let him run, she said finally. Let him hide in the shadows and watch, while we build something beautiful. That's the best revenge, living well. Roman smiled and kissed her forehead. My wise queen. A knock interrupted them. Your Majesties? Alara's voice called. The council is assembled. There are matters requiring your attention. Duty calls, Roman sighed. Then let's answer together, Ivy said, climbing out of bed and reaching for her robe. As they dressed and prepared for another day of ruling, Ivy caught her reflection in the mirror again. The girl who'd knelt crying on a ballroom floor seemed like a stranger now. In her place stood a woman who'd survived rejection, betrayal, and battle, and emerged victorious. Her mother's necklace still hung around her neck. She wore it every day as a reminder of where she'd come from. But the silver circlet waiting on her dresser represented where she was going. "Ready?" Roman asked, offering his hand. Ivy took it, their fingers intertwining perfectly. Always. They walked through the palace halls together, king and queen, alpha and dire wolf, partners in every sense of the word. Wolves bowed as they passed, but there was no fear in their eyes anymore. Only respect. Only hope. The future was uncertain. Kyle was still out there somewhere, likely plotting revenge. Political challenges would arise. The kingdom had been fractured for so long that healing would take time. But as Ivy settled into her throne beside Roman, his hand warm in hers, she felt nothing but confidence. She'd been told her entire life that she was broken, wolfless, worthless. But the truth was, she'd never been broken. She'd been waiting, gathering strength in silence, preparing for the moment she'd finally rise. And rise she had, from servant to queen, from rejected to cherished, from invisible to legendary. The white direwolf prophecy wasn't about destruction or domination. It was about balance, about a power rising to meet another power, creating something stronger together than they ever could apart. Ivy looked at Roman, and he looked back with silver eyes full of love and partnership and promise. This was just the beginning. If you made it this far and you still haven't subscribed, the algorithm won't show you part 2 of future stories unless you subscribe and engage. So here's what I need. Subscribe, right now. Then comment and tell me, Team Roman or Team I knew Kyle was trash from day one. And if you want to see what happens when Kyle comes back for revenge, or if you want another supernatural romance that'll wreck you emotionally, let me know below. This channel only survives because of you. Your support, your comments, your subscriptions. Don't just be a ghost viewer. Be part of the family. Love you all. And I'll see you in the next story.